Wes, let me ask you, again, some of this stuff is conviction, faith. Some of it is thousands of hours of studying, writing papers and research and all this stuff. How many total hours would you say you've put in this, in learning this?
I mean, I don't know the hours, years. I mean, there's the whole 1,000 hours thing, right? That if you devote
10,000 hours.
10,000 hours,
right.
yeah. So, I mean, at minimum, I've definitely done that in terms of my original motivation. And I work for an organization called Apologetics Canada, which is a national not-for-profit organization in Canada. And our goal is that we want to pursue and communicate a biblically sound and intellectually robust and a culturally engaged faith. We want to come alongside Christians and help them know what it is they believe and why they should believe it. And so alongside that, I put in the time, not just because I'm interested in becoming an expert, not because I want to kind of gain some sort of credibility intellectually, although I do want to, derive a level of expertise where I can speak knowledgeably on a topic, but ultimately because I think these topics are important. And I think that they have ramifications that go beyond simply historical inferences, that Jesus is no less than a historical character, but he's also so much more than a historical character. And so my motivation and my interest is ultimately because I think that these things are true, and I adhere to a set of scriptures that calls me to love the Lord my God with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength. And part of that is loving God with my mind. And so I'm going to try to do, to the best of my ability, dive into that in order to be able to communicate what I believe is ultimately the truthfulness of the Christian worldview.
While you're going through your faith, did you ever hit a wall? And if you did, what was a topic you hit a wall? Because you know how you study Billy Graham, when Billy, before went on his crusade, he went and met with, I think it's Henrietta Mears, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know if you know the story or not.
No, I don't.
Yeah, he goes, Rob, can you type in Henrietta Mears, Mears, and Billy Graham? I think I'm getting the name right. Women's History of Henrietta Mears. Can you zoom in a little bit for me to read on zoom in? Okay, let's meet the women who inspired Billy Graham, Bill Bright, and more. Motivational whisperer. Allow me to introduce Henrietta Mears, who blessed countless people, young and old, who crossed her path, and she was the most intentional, spiritual, perpetual disciple that I've ever read about. She was also never met a stranger, never judged her students, even when they misbehaved. She loved on them just as Jesus would do. I learned about her thanks to a friend. This is the book that was her story, Dream Big. What's the quote at the top, Rob, top of the book? She is certainly one of the greatest Christians I have ever known, Billy Graham. Meet the woman who shaped the lives of some of the most influential Christians of our lifetime. Go a little lower, Rob. Henrietta was born in 1890 to 1963. You cannot fathom all she did in her lifetime. Upon which she had last bread, you'll get a first-hand glimpse as you read this book. Go a little lower. First generation of the Christian. So there's a story about her. I mean, I read this 20 years ago, a while back, where he hit a wall, where it's kind of like you're questioning certain things. What about this? I hit a wall with my faith at one point. And I was, going through it, and there was multiple people that played a very important role for me. Yeah. And there's different levels of wall. The first one was when I'm living in Iran. I'm getting kicked out of Bible study in this Assyrian church that my dad used to take me on Sundays. And I'm like, you want to tell me about there's a Jesus and a God? Look at all the bombs that we got from Iraq. You want me to believe this? No. And then the pastor eventually has a conversation with my parents, and they kick me out. And then later on, you're going through the next one and the next one. I'm like, the Bible, it's a lot of, this was written at a time that you had to find a way to control the populace. And people's level of naivete was they were so naive that it was easier to control people back then. Most people were not educated. Most people didn't know how to read. So they wanted to kind of, believe in something that made their lives easier. Somebody else is doing the thinking for me. I'm going to be protected. But for you, did you ever have a moment where you hit a wall where you had to go to somebody to help you out with your faith?
Oh, definitely. I mean, there have been lots of people who've been mentors in my life.
Not necessarily mentors. What I'm looking at is like a breaking point for you. This is tough for Billy Carson, but this could also be good for Billy Carson. I actually think Billy Carsons are net positive for the world. And let me explain why. because I think eventually they're going to run into somebody like you who is gentle. You were very respectful. You were not condescending. You didn't use that opportunity to embarrass him. You didn't use that opportunity to undermine him. And I think you showed grace versus nowadays, there's a lot of people that are debating that want to make the other person look like they're dumb.
Right.
You didn't do that. I think that's a great example. That shows, wow, you can win an argument. And, you know, I looked at your YouTube channel, what it did after your podcast with Mark when it was released, 22,000 subs, 20,000. You got 100,000 subs within the next week after that podcast was released. And then now you're at 252,000 subs. And you went on the biggest podcast on the world. And this is not even close to what's about to happen to you today. I mean, the number one podcast that beat Joe Rogan's podcast became number one because Joe Rogan told the world to go watch your podcast. So do you understand, like, Joe beat himself because Joe told everybody else to go. What was his podcast? Telepathy tapes?
Yeah, telepathy tapes.
Telepathy tapes. So Joe Rogan says, guys, I just watched his podcast. Everyone goes watch the podcast. It's beating Joe Rogan. Oh, my God, Joe Rogan's losing to this podcast. No, he's not. He promoted that podcast, right? Nowadays, more than ever, the brand you wear reflects and represents who you are. So for us, if you wear a Future Looks Bright hat or a Valuetainment gear, you're telling the world, I'm optimistic. I'm excited about what's going to be happening, but you're a free thinker. You question things. You like debate. And by the way, last year, 120,000 people got a piece of Future Looks Bright gear with Valuetainment. We have so many new things. The cufflinks are here. New Future Looks Bright. This is my favorite, the green one. Just yesterday, somebody placed an order for 100 of these. If you watch the PBD podcast, you got a bunch to choose from. White ones, black ones. If you smoke cigars and you come to our cigar lounge, we have this high quality lighter cutter and a holder for the cigars. We got sweaters with the Valuetainment logo on it. We got mugs. We got a bunch of different things. But if you believe the future looks bright, if you follow our content and what we represent with Valuetainment, with PBD Podcast, go to vtmerch.com. And by the way, if you order right now, there's going to be a special VT gift inside just for you. So again, go to vtmerch.com, place your order, tell the world that you believe the future looks bright. If you enjoyed this video, you want to watch more videos like this, click here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click here.